So on the line today to Mark Passio. How you doing, Mark?
Mark, it's great to be here on your show today. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
Great to have you on. So your website is called What on Earth is Happening, whatonearthishappening.com. It's thoroughly recommended as a resource. I guess it might be a good place to start to ask whether there's an easy answer to that question. What on earth is happening? Is there an easy way of summing it all up?
Well, whenever people used to ask me that, give me the quick version to the answer to that question, I used to say mind control. And that would be my summary. That's what's happening on the earth. But I've really condensed it down to even one word. What's really happening on this planet is slavery, and it needs to be ended. So when people ask me what my website is about in general, I tell them that my website is about slavery and how to end it. And that usually piques their interest a little bit, and they want to know, exactly what I'm talking about on it, and that will usually make them go up there and at least check out a little bit of it.
Oh, yeah. People think slavery was abolished a while back, but we're talking about mental, spiritual slavery, which is very much alive and well, isn't it?
That's right. It's all over the earth. I mean, really, we are held under duress at all moments of our lives, and many people don't even recognize that, and they think what they're living in is something akin to freedom when it's nothing of the sort at all. We are actually living in a violent society, a society that is completely driven and backed by violence, and it's completely immoral, and people need to understand what really is right and what really is wrong, what is moral and what is immoral, what actions are in harmony with natural law, with moral law, and which actions are not in harmony with natural law. And that's what people don't fully understand as of yet, and that's why we're not really a free people. And until we understand the true objective difference between right and wrong and live it in our lives, we're not going to be free. And that's really the kind of material that I get deeply into in my podcast series and on my website in general.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to get into all of that. I want to get into natural law. I want to get into the awakening of humanity and all this spiritual stuff, and keep it positive, keep it uplifting and inspirational. But before we go there, I just want to recap a bit on an aspect of your background, which I know a lot of people will probably be quite shocked about.
Sure.
You were a practitioner or a priest, I believe, in the Church of Satan?
Yes.
And
for many years, I was involved in Satanism and dark occultism in general. I became attracted to it in my youth through a hatred that developed for general organized religion, or what I now call cultural religion. And my background, my family, wasn't the kind of people to question things. They were the kind of people that just accepted what was given to them by their parents and their parents before, and then just propagated that system of indoctrination with religion and with just anything else that is going on culturally, in our lives, in our world.
Yeah.
And when I started realizing that the world wasn't as it seemed to be, or as even my family and parents were telling me that it was, I rebelled against that, but in a very dark and negative way, with a lot of hatred. And I had no frame of reference in knowledge, in true knowledge. So I explained to people I didn't understand astrotheology. This is a topic that people really have to understand in order to understand what religion in the modern day is. I had no knowledge of astrotheology. When I learned about astrotheology, all my hatred for organized religion vanished almost in a moment when I understood what religion really was and where it came from and why it was the way that it is today. Lacking that knowledge, without that frame of reference, I couldn't assuage the anger that I felt for seemingly being lied to or misdirected by even members of my own family because of the lies that they had accepted and then just mindlessly propagated. So that drove me to seek the exact antithesis. I wanted to find what is the opposite of this.
Yeah. And
I found it in a big way in the form of Satanism and dark occultism. So I got involved in some of these groups, and I realized that they weren't really the satanic ideology, obviously wasn't what most people think that it is. We could talk about the true tenets of Satanism and dark occultism if you want, but I realized it was an ideology that really ran the world, and I was realizing these groups, these occult groups, were not just isolated individuals working for their own personal reasons or personal agendas, to enhance their own knowledge and power, but they were actually really an eclectic variety of people from every walk of life, every social institution that you can imagine. Yep. Politics, banking, law, entertainment, military, the medical profession, education, you name it. Yep. And they were working together. They were a tight-knit group of interconnected networks, and they were working together toward a common agenda. That agenda was really controlling everybody else. Yep. This was like a an arm of a cabal that's working toward global slavery, working really to continue global slavery because they're already in control. And again, the level I was involved, I tell people very honestly, was what I admittedly call the Boy or Girl Scout level of involvement. This was a very low level area where they were looking for people with certain personality traits, talents, characteristics that they could exploit and then groom that person upward through the so-called chain of command or the hierarchy, however you want to call it, in this dark occult network, to place them then in a position as a point man for them to exploit and influence society. So I call what the Church of Satan was doing psychological vetting and filtration. They were vetting people for certain psychological characteristics, and then they were filtering them upward through their hierarchy and grooming them as point men for positions of power. Yeah. That's really what this whole satanic network does. It interfaces with the public at this low level that I was involved in it at. And when I realized that I was involved with these organizations at that level, my conscience at that point wouldn't allow me to go further. I wanted no part of it at that point upon recognizing what it really was at a higher level, that this organization was just this real low level public interface level of these higher level dark occult networks that are working worldwide. So I pulled back my involvement and have no affiliation with them now and never will again, because I was about going into this hidden knowledge for just personal reasons. I wanted a personal tactical advantage in the world over other people who didn't have that knowledge. In my former low level of consciousness and selfishness and just a life that was just geared toward service to self in my past. Essentially, once I did that, once I understood what it really was, I pulled back my involvement, and they didn't have any problem with me doing that whatsoever. Their reaction to this was, "You think that we need you to do what we're doing? There's 10 other or 100 other people like you that we'll find." And it was more like, go and say what you think to anybody. That we have people's minds under such tight control. You're going to realize that. You're going to find that out. And when you try to tell people about what you've seen, it's not going to do any good. So they were just like, they had no... You. Absolutely. They had no intention of trying to get me to stay, trying to convince me that what I was doing was a mistake, or even threatening me. It wasn't even a threat. It was just like, okay, boy, we're done with you now since you don't want to be involved, and now take off and go and do your worst trying to tell people what we're about, because we have their mind completely and it won't do you any good. That was their attitude.
How far back are we talking, Mark, with this? What's the time scale?
This was in the started in the earlier part of the 90s and progressed almost through completely to the early 2000s.
What do you think the attitude of these people would be now, given the gradual awaken of humanity through the efforts of yourself and many others to alert people to humanity's plight? How do you think they would feel about it at this point in time?
Well, Mark, I could tell you an anecdote about this, and it's not very positive. I know the show is called Good Vibrations, and I'd really like to, espouse this on a positive bent. But to be honest, I don't feel that they're worried a bit. Not at all. And I'm just being honest. I want to be honest with people, and I don't want to break them down and break their will to move forward and change things. That's the whole idea here. That's what we want is to activate people. But if you're asking me honestly what I think that they think, I don't feel that they're worried at all, because I feel that they understand a concept about a quantum shift that many people don't understand. And I could tell you a small anecdote about this, and hopefully it will put it all into perspective about what my take. Admittedly, I'm not trying to say that this is how all of them think, but my take on this, based on some people I've spoken to, on what they feel about what's going on globally right now.
Yeah.
I was involved in another organization. Not the Church of Satan. It was another local satanic group or network based out of Whitehall. I've not recently, but about maybe it was probably around 2008, long after I had severed my involvement with a lot of these groups. Maybe 2009. I sent an email to a former associate that was in one of these dark occult organizations, who was higher up than me and who I knew had some affiliation with, some higher level occultists. And I basically just sent a very short email saying, I know you're not interested in really speaking to me or at length or anything like that. I know what I'm, doing now. And I basically emailed them and asked him, what do the higher ups in the satanic hierarchy think about what is going on globally? This was, I guess, around the time, Ron Paul was running for president. A whole lot of videos were coming out online about, 9/11 and the awakening, and, just exposing a lot of stuff. I call it really the time. This was the beginning of the earnest apocalypse, the revealing.
This would be around the time that I personally woke up myself.
Right. A lot of information was coming forth like a deluge at this point in the world. And, I just asked this person what his leaders thought of what's going on. And instead of responding to me in words, he sent me a picture, a JPEG picture, back by email with no other response. It was just like, how you get an email response and it says on whatever date, Mark Passio wrote, and it had my little paragraph that I wrote down at the bottom, but then above it, in the response area, it had no words. It just had an image. He attached an image, and it was an image of a clown with a huge blue, one-piece jumpsuit outfit with white polka dots on it, and he had real big, big clown shoes and a multicolored wig like, Ronald McDonald might wear, with a big red clown nose, and he had a party hat on and a little horn, a little kid's horn, like, honking a horn, waving at the camera. That's what he sent me back. Now, what that tells me is that they think that the so-called awakening is a joke. It's so paltry, and it's so insignificant, and it's so completely ineffectual compared to the mass control that they are exerting over the masses of people and over the mass portion of the collective human psyche. That it's a complete laughing belly laugh joke to them. And I personally, I wouldn't say I agree with that sentiment from their perspective, but I would say I could understand why they think that, because I'm not a person who feels that there's a huge global awakening going on at all. When I step outside my home and I look at the masses of people on the street, they are 100% completely asleep and have not even begun in any aspect of understanding any portion of the truth that's going on around them in their world. Zero. They are what the dark occultists call the unbegun. That this is their term for the people who haven't started at all whatsoever. They are the uninitiated. Initiation means to begin to uncover the hidden knowledge, to begin to awaken, to begin the journey into true spirituality and true enlightenment. And they have not begun at all. That's what the dark occultists call them. And I puzzled over that term. I didn't understand that term during the entire time that I was involved in the dark occult. Whenever anyone used it, it was just more like one of those things where you just say yes, and just, not completely pretend that you understand it, but just, you don't stop the person from saying what he's saying and ask him for clarification and say, well, I have no idea what you mean by that term. Could you please clarify? I never did that and asked them what it meant, whenever they used that term. And I didn't really understand what they were saying to me when they kept using that term, and very few people used it. It was like you could tell the people who were really higher up in the hierarchy and really into the ideology, they were the people who used that term. The lower down people in these organizations simply referred to common name for the everyday person was the dead. They call people the dead. And again, their rationale for this is, well, if the expression for consciousness is thoughts, emotions, and actions, and the majority of the people out there don't really think, they just go along with whatever is told to them, so they don't have any real knowledge, hence they're not using the thought aspect of consciousness to gain knowledge and understanding. And if they don't really care about what's going on either within them or around them, then they don't have the emotional aspect of the personality of the consciousness developed. That's also inactive or dead. And then they certainly aren't taking any action based on what they know and how they feel, and if they care, to make any real world change happen in our society on a mass scale. So they're inactive, they're either lazy and don't want to do that work, or they're cowardly and they're afraid because they're afraid of standing up and standing out and doing something that other people aren't doing and speaking out against the system. So if their rationale is, if the person's thoughts, meaning they have no knowledge, is deadened, okay, their thoughts are deadened, their emotions are deadened, meaning they don't care, and their action is deadened, meaning that they don't act because they're either lazy or cowardly, then they're dead. All three aspects of their consciousness is dead, so they consider them, and their rationale for doing anything to them that is harmful is, I'm not doing that to an actual living being. I'm doing that to something that's a thing that's already dead.
They deserve, and that is how they look at it, because they brought it on themselves. Yes, the way they see it.
That is how they look at it. Absolutely, yes. So, to go back to your original question, what do I feel about the global awakening, or what do they feel about the global awakening? They're not concerned about it at all. And I would like to tell you that they really absolutely should be concerned about it, but I don't want to be concerned about it until it happens in much, much, much larger numbers. There will be concern. People ask me this all the time. When will you say that the world is really waking up? And I tell people, I will say that the world is really waking up when police and military are quitting their jobs in such huge numbers that the media has to start talking about it. That's the sign that I will say, now we're reaching a global awakening. Now people are really coming online and they're really waking up. And does anyone see that happening or even coming close to happening? Not a bit. As far as I'm concerned, I think those people are so deep in the trance, so attached to their identity, the ego identity that they have built up for themselves. They so think that this is who I am, that they will do anything. They will die multiple times if they had to to preserve that ego identity. That's how strong and calcified it is, like bone. It's like stone. It's like a fossil. It's like diamond. It's so hardened.
Yeah.
And to get through that is going to take monumental work, monumental and continuous effort to break down that ego identification. And I'm telling you, it's the person's will, the individual's will that is that ego identified does not have the individuated strength to do that on their own. They would need a multifaceted support system comprised of many, many, many people to constantly work on them from different aspects and different angles, to influence them. That's what alchemy is about. Alchemy is not about just changing yourself. Enlightenment's not about just changing yourself. This is a big New Age deception when it comes to what the awakening process is about. Waking yourself is the beginning of the process, not the end of the process. It's the beginning point. You are now initiated, meaning you have begun. You are no longer the unbegun, as the dark occultists would call someone who hasn't started on that path. You're now the initiate. You have begun. But that doesn't mean you're finished. That means you've just started. That's what initiated means. You've just started. So what the work actually is to do is influence others to awaken and stop participating in the immoral behaviors that they're currently involved in or supporting. And that's the problem. The people who are awakened largely don't understand that that's what the work is. Because the New Age movement is a big part of blocking that understanding. A huge, huge deceptive part in the blocking of the understanding of what our real work is to do. Because they want to convince people, and they have convinced many, many, many people, that the enlightenment process is only about what happens with the individual, with you. And that is absolutely untrue. It's something I've been trying to break down and explain to people since day one. This is about influencing other people's minds because of how off course they are. See, what the dark occultists understand is something that's true. They understand that a universal quantum shift, a global quantum shift on this planet can only be made possible through numbers. It's another lie of the New Age movement that only a small group of people are going to be necessary to become awakened, this very small critical mass number, and that's not true. A quantum shift, the word quantum in Latin, you could look it up in any good Latin reader or Latin dictionary. The word quantum means an amount of something in Latin, a certain amount. You need a certain amount for there to be a quantum shift. It is dependent upon numbers because it's about the aggregate consciousness in the aggregate, meaning in the whole, in the totality, the sum total of the people. Wherever that aggregate consciousness is, that's what's going to determine whether change happens on a mass level, on a global level, actively out in the world, in the physical domain. Okay, so. Do I feel where do I fall on this? Do I, lean toward the people who say, oh no, a big, huge global awakening is happening? Or do I think that the dark occultists are right? And so far, as far as making real world change happen on a mass scale, is this effort a joke? I feel it's a joke as well so far. Maybe that might be harsh to say it's a total joke. I would say it's paltry. It's a paltry effort. That's probably the best word that I would use. That means it's so little that it is practically insignificant. What has happened so far?
I think we have to take this as an indication that clearly there's a long way to go. But having said that, my take on it is that I think what we're seeing in these times is the first generation that is going to start to make a change for future, from which future generations will benefit.
Agreed.
If we take the view of these dark occultists, and we have to remember that they're very arrogant in their outlook and they're very obsessed with ego themselves.
Sure.
And so they would mock and they would scoff because it's in their nature to do that. They're so arrogant as to believe that they've got this world locked down in such a way that it cannot be surpassed. But if we take the same view as them, then the likes of you and me and many others would just pack up and stop trying to make a difference and stop trying to do anything at all. So I think we have to take this as an indication that there's a lot to do, there's a long way to go, but it has to start somewhere, and the ripples have to begin.
And that's why not giving up is so important.
Exactly. Having listened to all of that, someone of a pessimistic nature could well be led to think, well, what's the point? I might as well just join the masses and continue in my brainwashed trance. But you mustn't give up, because it's so important. You must stay
and you know
on
what?
the path.
Just think about it from this perspective. Giving up is like participating with the evil system. Even if it were true, let's just say it were true, and I don't believe this. Just say it were true, it's not possible to make any change, okay? And I definitely do not believe that. It is possible to create this change that we're talking about, okay? The question is, will we do it? But it's certainly possible. I certainly feel it's possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Just let's say, for hypothetical argument sake, it's not possible, and it's always going to be like this, okay? Even if I knew that were true, I would still be doing what I'm doing. I would still do this, because what the mark I want to make on this world, I want people to say, how am I going to be remembered? How was this individuated unit of consciousness called Mark Passio? How is he going to be remembered? When people say, well, what did he do while he
why did you come? What was the point of coming here?
What was my reason for being? What was my purpose? What was my whole purpose for existing?
Exactly.
You know? And this is how I'd rather it be remembered than somebody who just laid down and accepted slavery.
Yeah, just another fluoride consuming, TV watching, game show lapping up, McDonald's hamburger eating drone.
Right.
Really.
That's not how I'll be remembered. I'll be remembered as someone who exerted their will and who took a stand against what was wrong in this world. And it didn't matter if the entire world was arrayed against him. He still went with what he knew was right. And you know what? That's a great existence to live, as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely. So, you know, I'll take that side of things no matter what else is going on. Yeah. So that's how people, I think that's the kind of willpower people should exert when it comes to this, you know, get involved in this effort. I'm not doing this because I think there's going to be such a great change during my lifetime. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, period, full stop.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I think that's what's motivating quite a number of people in these times as well, regardless of what else is going on. It strikes me that the question of what life is all about and the meaning of our existence, why we're here, is a question that must have crossed everyone's mind at some point in their life. So even going back to the TV watching, hamburger munching masses, you know, at some point in these people's lives, surely they must have stopped to question, who am I? Why am I here? What is life all about? You know, atheists have arrived at, you know, people that believe in no spiritual existence at all. They've taken the decision that there's nothing out there. At least they've thought about it. They've addressed the question. And it strikes me that everyone surely must spend some time in their life reflecting and musing on these things. But you get people reacting in different ways to the important questions in life. You know, some people end up pursuing a very spiritual path and they seek knowledge and self-empowerment and all of that. Other people join organised religions. Other people make the conscious decision to be an atheist. Do you think there's any sense in which our life experiences may already be mapped out for us before we incarnate into this reality? And when you become a Christian or an atheist or a spiritualist or whatever, you're merely going through the motions in your daily lives that have been kind of preordained for you, whether by yourself in a higher state of consciousness or by some entity that some people would call God. Does that make any sense?
Sure, it does. Can I go back a little and address a little bit of the first part of what you said, and then I'll answer your question
it's
about
whether it's a bit of a two-parter, really, isn't it?
Yeah, whether our lives are kind of preordained or not. The first thing that really resonated with me with what you said there was the role of knowledge as to what colors somebody's worldview. You know, you have people that have kind of like you could say given up on even thinking that there is any real purpose to anything, because I feel like they've glimpsed that there's a role that knowledge plays in that. And they know they don't have that knowledge, and they know it might be a long and arduous journey to acquire that level of knowledge. And what comes with a lot of knowledge? Responsibility. And these are individuals who are still in a childlike mentality and a childlike psychological makeup. And when they even subconsciously, they don't even have to consciously put all that together, what I just laid out there, okay? They can understand that from an intuitive or subconscious point of view, that, well, there may be answers to this, and more likely than not, there are answers to these questions, but that involves a lot of effort to acquire it based on where we're at now. Yes. As far as this knowledge being hidden or suppressed, or even just being ignored by the mainstream, so that it's you have to go into what you could call fringe areas to even acquire it. Okay, yeah. They don't want to be seen as people like that. They don't want to do that work. It's a laziness thing that they don't even want to do that work. They just want they want somebody to give them the Cliff's Notes edition or the 6 o'clock evening news soundbite variation of the knowledge that leads to enlightenment, and there is no such thing.
Exactly.
So the first thing is the role of knowledge, and that's like almost a dirty word to most people, because that involves effort. Knowledge just doesn't suddenly bestow upon you. Yeah. You have to go out, seek it, acquire it, filter all the disparate pieces of information that you've encountered to come to an understanding of the truth. That's First of all, that's a lot of work. Believe me, I don't know what I know now accidentally. I don't know what I understand right now in my life. I didn't come to acquire that information accidentally. That was long, hard, deliberate work in the face of a lot of other distractions, in the face of a lot of other things that tried to take me off of that path, and that is a continuous effort of willpower to acquire knowledge like that. That's what people, I believe, subconsciously recognize is necessary. And they don't want it to be that way. Yeah. They hate that it's that way. So they say, well, I'd rather just say, I don't believe in any of it, or I don't care, and I'm just going to drift through and not bother to do that, because where we're at right now, it's so arduous, it's such a difficult task and journey to acquire that knowledge. And then on the other end of it, what do I get? I have now personal responsibility that I have accrued because I have this knowledge. That puts me in a position of moral obligation. Exactly. That if I recognize the world is in a precarious position and everybody is asleep, well, I have the responsibility to then take the time of my life to bring this information to other people. Yes. And that means sacrificing other things that I want to do for me.
That's right.
And therefore, these people just say, no, I can't be bothered with that. I'll just, float through here and not bother to do it, even look into it from square one, and stay as the quote unbegun. So that's the first part of the question or comment that you made. The second part was you asked about fate, or if there's any kind of a predestination for souls, for our lives, or our life's purpose.
Exactly.
And my answer to that is no, I do not believe in fate. I believe in synchronicities that lead us up to our purpose. And then we can choose whether we want to follow those or not. But I believe this is a free will zone. We have free will in all the decisions that we make, and in all the behaviors and actions that we take. So I don't think God or the universe makes us do anything. Having said that, though, I also accept and know that there is no such thing as action without consequence. See, that's how our behaviors interact with the universe, through natural law. Natural law brings us the consequences of our behaviors so that we can understand what we've just done and whether it's something wise to do or unwise to do. So while I don't believe that anything makes us do anything in particular, okay, so I don't believe in fate or predestination, there is a predetermined aspect to reality, and that is natural law. It is set in stone, and it works the way that it does flawlessly, universally, 100% of the time, and can not be broken. It cannot be suspended.
Is this what would alternatively be referred to as cause and effect, or
yes?
There are many terms for it, but it's basically
the laws of
what you put out there, you get back. The energy that you extol comes back to you, and
that's correct.
Is reflected back at you.
Absolutely. It has been referred to in many ways. It's been referred to as the energy that we emit is the energy that we attract. The laws of attraction, the laws of cause and effect, karmic law, moral law, all of these things.
All terms for the same concept.
All the same thing. Consequentialism, it's been called also. This is all what I simply group under the banner and the umbrella, the term that I simply refer to as natural law. I've also called it universal spiritual law, because natural and spiritual are the same thing. They mean the same thing. The word natural is actually derived from ancient Egyptian or Cometian language, that neter. Neter means spirit or God, and al is a Middle Eastern root that always means of or related to. So related to the spirit, related to God. That's what the word natural means. It's the same thing as spiritual. You're just taking the root neter and replacing it with the English equivalent spirit. Neter, all, spiritual, all. It's the same thing. The all spirit, everything in the natural world is the spiritual domain as well. The physical and the material / physical and the spiritual are one and the same. That's where the dichotomy has to be broken down. People want to always place one or the other in precedent, in a superior position over the other. And in my work, I feel that that's a fallacy, and it's something that leads people down the wrong path. The material is not superior to the spiritual, nor is the spiritual superior to the material. They are the same realm. This is the domain that spirit incarnates in a physical form to have an experience in, and the material should not be pushed to the back burner any more than the spiritual should. So to go back to the question, though, while I don't believe in fate or total predestination, I believe that there is a predetermined aspect to the universe, which is called natural law, and I believe that there is a randomness component to the universe, which is known as free will, and they interact with each other and play with each other and dance with each other, if you will. We have free will to act, but not without consequence. So then we make our free will decisions, then we choose a behavior, and then we receive the fruits of that behavior through natural law. And that's how our universe is built. That's how our reality is built. Our reality is built in such a way. These are the real laws of attraction. The laws of cause and effect need to be understood if we're going to understand how we are co-creating the reality collectively in the aggregate. All of us are acting in concert to create the aggregate reality. And that's how a quantum shift is made. You need enough people behaving differently, doing things differently. So, I see a lot of these people, they come out to lectures, they come out to conferences, and they're absorbing it, soaking it in. And, you will ask, well, what are you doing? Are you reaching out to other people? No, I'm just learning. No, I'm just here to get this information. Well, somebody slapped me out of that level of complacency a few years back, and that's what led to What on Earth is Happening in my website and my lecture series, etc.
Yeah, I've heard you say before that there's a personal responsibility when you come across this knowledge and this understanding to participate in sharing it with others and putting it out there. And the way in which people can do that differs from person to person. Not everyone is equipped to do podcasts and radio shows and lectures, but there are many different ways that you can participate depending on your personal skills and gifts and abilities. But either way, there is a personal responsibility to act upon this information when you come across it. I've heard you say that before, and I absolutely agree with that.
That's exactly right. And, so the problem is that so many people aren't doing that.
Yeah.
Because and I think part of it is a lot of the information that many people encounter at first is of a new age variant, a new agey variety of information. And I'm not saying not to ever look into that. I think that does need to be looked into, and a lot of the really true and powerful and empowering concepts that the New Age movement talks about and brings forward need to be understood and integrated. But then there's these subtle deceptive things in the New Age teachings that I think people take in with the good stuff. They're taking in these adulterated concepts, these adulterated so-called teachings with the good stuff. And that's a big, dangerous thing to do. It's a dangerous proposition to just take all of that in and not filter any of it.
Yeah.
So, and that's the danger in the beginning of this journey, again, because a lot of this New Age information comes in at the beginning. At least it did that. It was that way for me. Then the whole, global conspiratorial aspect opens up to you, and that's the negative part. But and for some people it happens the other way. They get the negative stuff first, and then they start to understand the spiritual aspects. For me, it was the other way around. I came to a level of somewhat of spiritual understanding, and then really started to delve deeply down and understand the control system. Even though I had been involved in it at a low level, I was still under mind control myself, and didn't really understand how all these different societies, networks, and institutions worked together. Yeah. So that took a lot of uncovering and discovery and truth seeking and reading, etc. as well.
Yeah.
But to go back to what I was saying about the New Age movement, they'll give you this concept in many of their teachings that, well, this is for you. It's for your journey, your individual spiritual journey toward enlightenment, and that doesn't have to do with anybody else. And again, this is a very subtle deception because it nests in the mind. Possibly even into the subconscious mind of the person who's taking in such a teaching, that all this is about is my understanding. And once I have the knowledge that I need, and I can get that from all these different sources in the modern electronic era, technological era, then I'm done. And I don't need to go out and become a teacher of this information. I don't need to try to explain to my family that this is how the world really is.
Yes.
I don't need to go online and make my views public online, because I just want to hide in my little shell, in my cocoon, grasping onto the little bit of knowledge that I have. This is the danger of where it will lead to. And what good would all this knowledge do if people aren't sharing it and acting on it?
Absolutely.
And the second part is the most important. Sharing it is absolutely critical. But if we're not actually living what we understand, putting it into knowledge, putting it into practice, putting that knowledge into practice, that's what converts it to true wisdom. Someone's not truly wise unless they're living what they know. And you see so many people that will say, well, yeah, I know that, but I have this type of a job that it's involved somehow in this aspect of the control system, and that's all I can do right now, and my income's dependent on that, and I have a family. Well, I often will just put things very bluntly, no matter how harsh it may come across. That's just my tact. I don't intend on changing my tact. Personally, I like the way that it is. Personally, the teachers that I've had in the past, they've been like that, and at least for me, and I'm not saying everybody will be like this, but I'm trying to reach the people that will actually just take this readily, and then they can go and work on the people who are going to really take an abundant amount of work. So I look at my role in this is to wake the people that are already on the edge, and sometimes you could do that with just a very straightforward type of language.
You're the non-sugar coated version.
Exactly. And, so what I'll say is, maybe you need to just quit your job and be poor. And then maybe something else will open up. The universe will bring you something for stopping doing the thing that you're involved in a negative capacity. Maybe the universe will open up an avenue of opportunity that you couldn't even imagine right now. Yeah. And you'll be even more prosperous, 10 times more prosperous than what you're doing right now, because you did the right thing. See, staying in a position because of fear is only going to exacerbate hardship. It's going to make things like trudging through molasses. Okay, we're going against the flow, the will of creation, by doing that. And when people bring that up and say, well, I have kids, well, who knows? I don't know what should happen. Maybe you and your family might have to live on a budget or an income that makes you live like paupers for 5 years of your life. Maybe that's what needs to happen. Yeah. Okay? And people will hear that and they'll go, oh my God, how can you say something like that? Well, here's why. If you're involved in the support of slavery, no matter at what level that it is, you're contributing to the negative outcome. You have to pull back that involvement to the extent that you are capable of doing it, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And that's the thing people don't have the courage to do. They don't have the courage and the willpower to do that. So I've pulled back my involvement from anything that is dark, negative, or involved in the control system to the total extent that I feel I am capable of in my life. Okay? I would live on the street. If I had no other mechanism of support and I could not make enough money except going into the banking system or going into the military or going into the police force, I would starve on the street. And I'm telling you that. I would do it. Okay, and people will say, "Oh, that's tough talk," and you'll see what you're willing to do when it comes to that. Yes, we would see. I know what my resolve is. I know what my determination is. I know what my willpower is. And I'm telling you, if it came to having to do one of those things, I would starve. I would choose starvation. Okay, now most people don't have that kind of willpower or resolve. I understand that. But I'm telling you, to make this change really happen, that may be the level of resolve and willpower that many people need to get to. That's how bad you have to want it. You have to want it so bad you want it like air, when air is cut off from you. If you're underneath the water, you want air more than anything else in the world. All your other desires go away if someone's holding you underneath water. Okay? That's how bad we need to want this change. That we put everything else to the back burner to make it happen. And most people think it's just going to be something that's magical and automatic and, oh, it's just we're just being pushed this way. No, it's the exact opposite. Entropy and the dark forces are pushing backward against this change constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The entropic force, or the force of involution, is constantly fighting against this change. We have to use our will to make it happen. It's not something that is automatic. That's another big, dangerous proposition and a big, dangerous and subtle deception in the New Age movement. They want to teach everybody that all the forces are aligning on our side to make this happen. It's not true. It's the opposite way. All the forces are aligning on the other side to make it not happen. The people's will has to be increased to such an extent that we have to make this change happen. Make it happen by an act of will. Most people don't want to hear that because, again, they're too in the right brain, New Age modality, and they think that this is just something that's magic. It's a magical thing. It's not magic. I'm not telling you the universe doesn't want this to happen, because I don't think the universe itself wants slavery. Okay? It wants us to prosper. It wants us to expand our awareness, and it wants us to evolve. Okay, but that doesn't mean that that's an automatic process. A quantum shift may or may not happen. It depends on our will. Yeah. And so our will has to align with these with natural law. And that's a free will decision to make. And then the behavior has to be actually taken. It has to be done. It has to be willed into existence. And that isn't going to happen if we're still supporting mechanisms that are basically slavery, for whatever euphemisms we want to call them. Okay? Is central banking a form of slavery? You better believe that it is. Is the current military a form of slavery, of enslaving the people? Absolutely it is. Are the current police forces mechanisms of slavery for the people? Yes, it is. Are the current governments mechanisms of slavery for the people? Yes. The monetary system, the educational system, the medical system, all of these things, okay? I look at it like this. You know the structure on the back of the $1 bill, the pyramid and the all-seeing eye? Yeah. Okay? That's a symbolism for stone and light. That's allegorical symbolism for something that can't be changed or isn't going to change. It's set in stone. That's the base of the pyramid. That's the negative aspect. The base of the pyramid is the dark and negative aspect of that symbol. That means unchanging, set in stone, weighted down by stone, which is gravity takes stone down to the earth and keeps it there in an earthly identification. And then on top of that, there's the all-seeing eye. And I know people think that's the negative aspect that represents, quote-unquote, the Illuminati. Okay? That's the positive aspect of the symbol. That represents the light of the Creator in the world, active in the world, that can't be weighed down, that sees the totality of the picture, and it understands its true spiritual nature. It's the awakened, the one eye, no longer seeing things in a dualism, but seeing it's unity consciousness. It's the three aspects, hence the triangle of consciousness, thought, emotion, and action coming together in non-contradiction. Unity consciousness means our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions are united. As we think, so we feel, so we act. And there's no contradiction between those three things. Well, if we say we want freedom, and one of the requirements for obtaining it is, well, you can't do things that enslave other people. And then we say, but I'm a cop. I'm involved in this. This is how I make my paycheck. Well, guess what? You can't get true freedom and continue to support a system of slavery. You're the stone in that pyramid saying, I'm going to change this structure of stone from the inside, and somehow it's going to magically change from the outside. I'm going to work in here inside the stone. When I'm stone already, I'm part of the structure, and I'm going to change this structure from the inside. That never has been the way anything throughout the history of human civilization has ever worked. That's why, see, this is the symbol of all masonry, whether it's free masonry or dark masonry. In occult terms, there's two kinds of masonry. There is true Freemasonry, which means you're building toward freedom. You're trying to remove that stone, all the barriers to the light, to let the light down and join with the earth. That's what that stone represents. Blocks, barriers, barricades, walls that we erect and to block us from freedom and from the true light of the Creator. And then there's the dark mason. He wants to build with the stone. He wants more of the stone. He wants to block people in. He wants to wall them in. He wants to wall them off from each other. That's what that bottom part of the pyramid in the stone represents. It's a spiritual prison. It's a trap because it's a trapezoid. The trapezoid is the big symbol in Satanism. See, people think the inverted pentagram is the biggest symbol of Satanism. It is not. Dark occultists, the two biggest symbols in the dark occult are the trapezoid and the hypercube, and they essentially represent the same thing. Those are the two biggest symbols that represent spiritual imprisonment, and they want to rule the prison. They're not interested in being free themselves. Like you said, these are just people who are, completely set in their ways. They're not evolving. They're have a twisted psychopathic mindset, and they're okay with that. But see, they're unified in their thoughts, their emotions, their actions. They have sick, twisted thoughts, sick, twisted emotions, and sick, twisted actions. And so, what the universe is going to say to that? Well, are you unified? Is all forms of your consciousness on the same path, on the same level? Well, then I'm going to get behind your effort. And people will say, again, they'll be horrified hearing me say that. How could you say the universe will support evil? I'm telling you, what the universe ultimately supports is unity. Unity is what it has a respect for. It won't matter whether it's light unity or dark unity. If you're on the same page and your actions don't betray your thoughts or your emotions, the universe will let you get what you want. And that's why it's letting these people get what they want, even though they're evil.
Yeah, I think few people would disagree from a glance at what goes on in the world or a quick look at a random evening news bulletin that the world is currently in the grip of a monumental force of evil. And it's been that way for thousands of years. And it would appear that things could equally have gone the other way, and that we could actually be living in a sort of utopian paradise if the focus had been on love and benevolence all that time rather than evil. Again, it's free will, and things were allowed to go that way because enough like-minded individuals concentrated on manifesting these evil, malevolent things. And we have the opportunity anytime we want to recreate our reality and our existence by overwriting the current version of it with a version that is all about love and benevolence. It's free will again.
And that ultimately comes down to how deeply do the individuals in that society understand natural law, and what I call the law of freedom. The law of freedom is, very simply, morality and freedom are directly proportional to each other. So I'll just say that one more time because it's so powerful to understand this. Morality and freedom are directly proportional to each other. As morality increases, freedom increases. As morality declines, freedom declines. Okay? So we ask ourselves, why are we really living in an unfree world? And the answer couldn't be more simple. It's because we're living in an immoral world. More people than not are making immoral decisions about what they're doing in their life. See, again, if we say we want something, there's requirements for that. Another big part of and I know I keep going back to the New Age deception, but it's so important to understand how this is a subtle deception. It teaches seemingly positive things, but what it leaves out, what it doesn't talk about, and the subtle deceptions that it inserts are so nefarious. We really need to understand that a lot of these things that people are being told through this movement are untrue and not the way things really work. And I'm not telling you throw the baby out with the bathwater either. There's a lot of good things that are true that they teach. That's how they get people to take these poison pills. They wrap it up in a whole lot of good stuff. And then they put that poison pill inside the good thing, so you'll take the good thing, but you'll be getting the poison with it.
Yeah.
So, one thing people have to understand is the more that they align themselves in a behavior or in support of a behavior that is immoral, all you're doing is creating more slavery. It can't be any other way. It's impossible for it to work out any other way. So an anecdotal example. I was on at a rally to alert people and raise consciousness about the horrible monetary practices of the Federal Reserve System, and how what they are deliberately trying to do is deliberately create debt slavery and devalue people's earnings and devalue their purchasing power. So we were handing out some flyers on the street action, walking down the street and handing out information about what the Federal Reserve System is here in America as a central banking system and what it does. And we reached Center City, Philadelphia, around City Hall here in Philadelphia, and I gave a flyer to a woman, and she said, I'm not going to do anything about that because I work for them. And she said, I don't even need this flyer because I already know how evil they are. I work for them. And I said, okay, did I just hear that correctly? You said, I already know how evil they are, and yet you continue to work for them. That's the worst place you could possibly be in, ladies and gentlemen.
That was a conscious choice.
Willfully choose to cooperate with evil because you want something from the evil that it can give you. I don't want anything from this evil system. No support from it. I want no money from it. I want no protection from it. I want absolutely nothing from this evil system. You know what I want from it? I want it to go away. I want it not to exist anymore. So she said willfully, I work for it because I have a family I have to support. This is the job I could get at the time. And I go to work there every day knowing that it's evil, knowing that I'm helping evil get done its evil.
Yeah.
And yet I'm going to continue to do that because I feel stuck. And I feel this is all I can do to work for money right now. And that's all I can do. Well, you know what? I didn't say this to her then because we were on the march, and I wanted to, somewhat keep up with the group. What I did say to her was, have you ever heard of the Buddhist philosophy of right livelihood? Right livelihood. And she said, no. I said, please look up that term. Go on a search engine on the internet and just look up right livelihood. And I said, please just try to understand that concept. That's all I really had time to hit her with at that point. Right livelihood is saying there are many different ways to make a living. If the way that you're making a living is involving the support of something that is immoral, you shouldn't do it for any reason. Any reason. There's no justification. I don't care if you have 20 children. I don't care what you're saying you're doing it for. It doesn't matter. It's an unacceptable justification. And that's an absolute. And the human ego has a problem with an absolute. It says, well, there's a reason that somehow, it can be justified, or and it searches and keeps looking and saying, well, there's got to be something that can make this right. There's got to be something that can make this not immoral. No, there's not. It's an absolute. That's the problem that the human ego has with an absolute. We can't sit down and say some things are absolute. Some things are absolute. Some things are not absolute. But some things are. And I'm telling you, this is one of them. This is something, the universe isn't going to look and say, people want to think, here's how people want to imagine that it works. Because it makes them feel better about their choices that are immoral. That's really what's going on here. It's called justification to make us more comfortable with our moral choices. Here's how they want to imagine that it works. They want to imagine the universe, it's going to have like a little clipboard, it's going to have notes on a clipboard, and it's going to say, okay, what's this person supporting? What are they doing? Supporting slavery, right? Through debt slavery, through the financial system. That's their job? Yes, that's their job. Okay, well, why are they doing that? They're doing it because they have 2 children to support, and this is the only thing that they feel they could possibly do to support those children. Okay, well then, hey, that's fine, no problem. Just continue to do that, and you're completely forgiven, and it's no problem because you had 2 children. The universe doesn't do that. It does not act like that.
So it seems.
The universe is governed by law. That law is impersonal. It's impersonal law. That's what natural law is. There's no person that personifies natural law. There's no being that personifies natural law. Natural law are universal boundary conditions, no different than gravity, thermodynamics, electromagnetism, etc. Okay? The forces in nature, this is one of them. Consequentialism or natural law is a force that exists in nature. Well, I give the example. Just look at it this way. As a parallel, a husband and wife with a 2-year-old daughter are on a little camping trip, and they're going to have a picnic out in the forest someplace. Okay, they set up the blanket, and let's just say the husband and wife, you start to become passionate, and the kid's playing with her little dolls or toys over on the side. And the husband and wife might be making out a little bit or whatever, and sharing a glass of wine and feeling real good. And it's a nice sunny day out, and they're distracted, and they miss the daughter veering off, getting up and going over away from their blanket, their little picnic setup, and she goes out to a cliff that's like 250 feet tall. And this little girl doesn't really understand. She might see something shiny. Oh, there's a little rock down there, and on that ledge that's a foot down. I'm going to just step over and try to get the rock, and she might fall over the edge. Well, does gravity care that it's a little tiny girl in a sundress out on a nice spring Sunday afternoon with her parents? Does gravity care, or is gravity still going to have an effect on that child if she steps over the edge of that cliff? Gravity's still going to have an effect on that child, and if that child goes over the edge, she will die. That's a cold and impersonal natural force. That's what natural law is. Natural law doesn't care why you did something. All it says is, did you do it? Well, then here's the consequence for having done it. It's like putting your hand in a fire. Well, it doesn't care why you made the decision. Did he put his hand in the fire because he just wanted to see how hot it was and what it would do to his hand? Okay, well then I need to just suspend the burn. on the fire, right? I'll suspend the burn on his skin because, oh, he was just trying to see how hot it was. It doesn't do that. You're still going to get burned. If somebody else is holding, hey, somebody else forced his hand into the fire and by their force, by their strength, made it stay there, okay? He didn't want it to be there. Is the fire going to say, well, oh, I can't burn you then because this is against your will? No. It's going to say, is your hand in the fire? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Well, then here's the result. And that's how natural law works. And I realize how unpopular I am for saying this. I get it. I fully understand. No one wants to hear that. They want to reject it. They will hate me for it. They will want to kill me for saying that's how it works. It doesn't matter. That's how it actually works. Not because I say that that's how it works. I have understood that that's how it works through trial and error, through personal discovery, through actual observation and testing. I can tell you I know that's how it works comfortably and know that I'm correct. Okay? I'm telling people don't believe me that that's how it works. Do not believe me. You have to go through the same truth discovery process of trying to understand yes or no. Is this how it works? How can we do testing? We can test this. We can test this hypothesis. And I would claim it's not a hypothesis, it's a law. That's why I group it under the term natural law.
Yeah.
Okay? You can do behaviors that either align with natural law or don't, deliberately, and find out what you get. Find out the direction that your life takes. Okay? I've actually done this. I've literally behaved a certain way in the past and said, what am I getting as a result of this behavior? What is this behavior? What is this involvement with this kind of a person getting me? What is this involvement with this kind of a group getting me? What is this involvement with this kind of a job getting me? I've done this deliberately to see what would manifest in my personal life.
One of the things that you say on your website is truth can never be destroyed. I think the full phrase was all is love, fear is illusion, all beings are free, truth can never be destroyed. Yes. And I've considered on many occasions lately how incredible it is that the truth always seems to rise to the surface in the end. Yes. Sometimes decades or centuries after a certain event. You know,
yes.
you have people now questioning the Kennedy assassination, for instance, which is 50 years ago. And then there's all kinds of theories about it, and there's information which is coming to the fore for the first time in 50 years, which may or may not be the truth. But, you know, the truth always seems to rise to the surface. And by the time that it does, often many human lifetimes have come and gone. Many individuals would have departed this realm without seeing great truths being revealed. And yet in the end they always are, and it seems the truth doesn't have a sell-by date, and it always does shine through in the end, one way or another.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I tell people, while the truth can never be destroyed, humanity can be destroyed if we will not come to the defense of the truth. Another thing that a lot of people think is that, well, there's no need to come to the defense of truth because truth can't be destroyed. Well, that's not. While it can't be destroyed, it can be blanketed and obscured and veiled to the point where people will believe that they can act in complete contradiction to truth without consequence, which is where we're at now in our society. You know, that's how much the truth has been veiled from people's eyes, or they have been dissuaded from ever looking into it. So, you know, the whole thing is that people have to actually continue to speak the truth once they have come to understand it. Again, that's the beginning of the process. The understanding of how natural law works is the beginning. Teaching that to other people is what the actual work that we are charged to do here is. Because, in other words, if no one ever put out any of these ideas into the world, no one ever attempted to put out an understanding of natural law, and I had to aggregate it from different sources, okay? Because many people talked about it from different angles, and again, from different, colloquial types of languages. Like, you know, you read about natural law from an 18th or 19th or early 20th century perspective, it's going to be a lot different than, it's going to be worded a lot differently than how you might understand natural law from hearing about it from me, or reading about it from someone who puts it in pretty plain and easy to understand terms like Richard Wetherill or someone, for example, just as an example. You read this in older occult books of how this works, and of course it's going to be much more verbose or even, more cryptically worded. So, you take it in from an eclectic variety of sources and piece it together, and you recognize, well, hey, I can explain this to somebody in everyday English, in the everyday English language, in a simple and easy to understand way. Now, they may have to get a lot of different concepts in order to understand it, a lot of different simpler concepts, but it can be explained in modern English just as easily, as even easier than how these people may have worded it kind of cryptically or even very verbosely in older styles or variants of English. Yeah. So, we have to understand that what we need to do is, in our own way, explain how this works to everybody around us. Yeah. Talk to people. Communication is that's the biggest skill. When I tell people in some of my lectures, part of my lectures are sometimes about what skills do we need? What actual real world skills do we need in order to do what I call the great work? What tools do we have to have at our disposal in order to do this work of putting this information out into the world, so that things will actually change and people will really understand how it works? And the very, very first tool that I tell them that they need are communications skills, communications capabilities. That's the very first thing. Okay, organization is also a big part of this. You need to be able to structure and organize knowledge and information in whatever form you're going to do it, even if it's just talking to someone else, right? Because you're going to want to start somewhere. So that's going to involve being able to think about it from a linear progression, right? So these skills that I'm talking about, they're left-brained aspects largely. They're about doing something in the physical world. They're about organizing, communicating. Verbal skills are left-brained, okay? To know how to structure words so that you can get an idea across to people, to learn how to organize concepts and ideas, etc. So these are some of the first things I tell people. These are your required skill sets, organization and communication skills. So you think about it, the right-brained aspect is the taking it all in. You're opening up your mind when you're in the right brain modality to taking in all of that knowledge. Yeah. Then what you're doing is you're filtering it, and then you're going to organize it so that you can communicate it to other people with the left brain. The problem with the whole creating this change, this great work, is that people aren't honing and developing these skills enough so that they can communicate it to someone else. And part of it is also that they believe they don't have to communicate it to someone else. Again, about 6 years ago or so now, someone gave me almost like a harsh smacking around in verbally, in words. They said to me, "What are you doing with what you know? You know so much, but what are you doing with it?" And I said, "What do you mean? What am I doing with it? I've been going to this conference, that conference, this lecture series, that gathering, and I'm taking it all in, and I'm understanding more and more and more." And this person said to me, she said, "What makes you think you're allowed to just do that? Just take it all in, and you're not putting anything back out there so that other people can understand what you've come to understand." She said, "What makes you think you have a right to even do that? You're in a position of responsibility because you're in a position of knowledge. You've gained all this knowledge. You're clearly a knowledgeable human being. You have to explain this to other people in whatever way you can, in whatever skill set that you have. You need to put that into practice."
There's a great line in a hip-hop record by Public Enemy, and it's Chuck D, frontman of Public Enemy, and he says, "I'm at the age, if I can't teach, I shouldn't even open my mouth to speak." I love that line.
Wow.
I'm at the age, if I can't teach, I shouldn't even open my mouth to speak. I feel that fits in.
That's powerful. Yeah, really. I love their lyrics. They're a great group, and have talked about the dynamic of freedom really since their inception.
Oh yeah,
but
they know.
that's powerful. That says it right there.
Really? Yeah.
This is about reaching out to other people. And again, like you said, you don't have to have all the same skill sets as somebody else. Okay, you have to do what you are capable of based upon the skill sets that you have. And if you want to do something different and it requires different skill sets, then you need to be able to go out and acquire those skill sets. You need to go to somebody who does know how to do those things, and get lessons so that they can teach you. So, you might need to do website design. You might need to learn marketing and promotion to promote events. You might need to learn video production or audio production, how to make a podcast, how to make a presentation. If you want to not do podcasts, but maybe you want to present in front of people, you're going to have to learn PowerPoint or Keynote or LibreOffice Present or something like that.
There you
You're
go.
going to have to learn something that you can actually do that task with in the modern world. So, graphic design, making flyers to promote your material or promote your presentation. All of these skill sets are involved. So it's important to first learn where are your strengths. What aspect of this are you going to take on? Okay, you might want to just talk about the monetary system at first, or you might want to just talk about the health dangers of or eugenics, or the occult or symbolism. It doesn't make a difference. I've chosen to try to aggregate it all and put a little bit of information about all of it out there so people get the big picture, the tapestry. I'm not even saying everybody would have to do that, but based on what you know now, you have a moral obligation to put information out there for other people in whatever way you are best suited to doing it. And if you want to be able to do it in a different way, then go out and get those skills. You're capable of doing that. All it takes is some time, attention. You might have to pay for certain lessons if that's the only way you can get the skill set. And if you have the income to do that, then you'll make it happen if you want it badly enough.
Yeah. Nothing short of fascinating. Lots of food for thought for people there. Do you just want to conclude by recapping on your website, whatonearthishappening.com, and particularly the podcast series that you do? Because I know that you recommend people start at Volume 1 and work their way through, which might sound like an obvious thing to do, but it is progressive, and if you listen to Volume 18 without listening to the first 17 volumes, it won't make much sense. So do you just want to recap on where you're going with that whole series? And
I think that's great that you brought that up, because that may not be so intuitive to some people. A lot of people, they'll click into a podcast and they'll say, well, what's he up to now? What's he talking about right now? This is the freshest, most current stuff. Please don't look at my podcast like a current events series. It is not. This is timeless knowledge. Okay, the things I talk about in podcast number 1 are no different. I would say the same things now that I said in podcast number 1. This is information about what has been going on, is going on, and is about things that are really unchanging. I sometimes talk about current events that are happening, but only to put them in a perspective, in a framework. Of the tapestry of the total information I talk about. So the website is whatonearthishappening.com. When you get there, my best recommendation, some people are very visual and they want to go right to the videos. The videos are great. If you want to go there, that's fine. There's a lot of info there too. The real body of knowledge there is in the audio, in the podcasts. And there's visual presentation slides given with most of the podcasts as well, because I'm a visual learner. I'm an audio and visual learner, but mostly a visual learner, and I really want to put graphics to what I'm talking about. So I do that in kind of a unique way with like mini presentations for each slide, for each podcast that I do. Don't take the temptation to just listen to the most recent stuff. Do yourself a favor and go back to number 1 on page 3 or whatever it is, and listen forward in progression at your own leisure and your own pace. You will get the most value out of this podcast series as a tapestry of information that way. That's my recommendation. And again, the website is whatonearthishappening.com. And Mark, I want to thank you so much for inviting me on your program today. I had a lot of fun.
Well, thank you for coming on. Definitely appreciate your input. Great stuff. Thanks for that, Mark.